Yeah, let's see what this is. Intro to Camus.
In his book, The Myth of Sisyphus,
this is what Gunky Peep posted in the Reaching for Greatness server, and he's always posting out Camus and wanting people to respond. So I might as well give him some response. Oh yeah, Groipers in the chat, make some noise. I don't hear anything. Sorry. I guess there's no Groipers in the chat this time.
The philosopher Albert Camus wrote the following about the routine of many people in the modern...
Oh, I didn't say what's up to Filechno. What's up, bro? How you doing?
...day. Rising, streetcar, 4 hours in the office or the factory, meals...
Also, this Camus dude is very depressing. I actually used to be interested in existentialism. I actually have I have all the books from my past. I never, got rid of half of them. So, I still have... Shit, let me look. I still have, John Paul Sartre's Being in Nothingness. I have The Myth of Sisyphus right back there. I want to stay turned to the mic so you guys can hear me, but I don't know if you did. But yeah, I have a lot of these books still. I used to be really into existentialism because that's sort of what meshed the best with my sense of life. I had this sense of life that happiness is impossible in this world. It's impossible to achieve anything, and that's very depressing. Just to be honest, that's probably the most depressing way to live, and that's sort of what my religious background got me, because it tells you man is this being with original sin, man is this being that cannot achieve greatness without God, and I took that seriously. I took it, oh yeah, man cannot achieve greatness, so that means I'm just gonna what's the point of this life? This life is just meaningless, and I think deep down I knew that God is not real. So then I would fall right into existentialism. There's no meaning in this world, so we got to create our own meaning or accept the fact. And suicide is this terrible thing that we constantly need to contemplate. And death is this big deal. That's terrible. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, what's up, ALR? And Daniel Cross says, "Oh, nihilistic Garrett." Yeah, man. I used to be very, very nihilistic. It was bad.
Streetcar.
But I think this is sort of a week of me responding to past premises. Well, I guess I only uploaded one video by myself this week, which was Thomas Aquinas. I was thinking about uploading another response video to School of Life, but I decided to save that till next week because I think I'm gonna try to just limit the content so I don't stretch myself out too much, or that's the wrong way. Cram a bunch of content into 1 week like I used to do, so that you guys can keep up with it for one, and also so that I don't just burn out as fast as I was before, because that's kind of the point I got to earlier. Daniel Cross says, "I feel you, man. Also grew up Catholic." Oh yeah, man, it's terrible. I actually have a bunch of Catholic books back there too. I've always been interested in buying a bunch of books. Whenever I get interested in something, I just buy a bunch of books from that thing so that I can go read about it. And I read fairly quickly. I try to read 10 pages a day, but I just don't get through stuff as fast as I'd like. So I have a bunch of stuff that I haven't read yet. And I need to get reading more. So after this stream is done, since I have no homework and no reading, and it looks like it's about to rain actually. Yeah, it is raining right now, so I can't go outside. So that means I guess I'm going to be reading tonight.
4 hours of work, meal, sleep, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday according to the same rhythm. See, that's this whole idea of just every day is the same and it just comes and goes. It's just this endless cycle. It's such a depressing way of looking at life. I mean, this is the way that I looked at things too, though, way back in the day. This is the way a lot of people look at life. They view this is sort of why existentialism is so popular in this culture, because people have this sort of midlife crisis sort of way of looking at the world where every day is the same and nothing's really happening. I mean, sure, that can be the case for some people if you're not aspiring towards anything, if you never put your life in a long-range context, if you never have values that you're striving for and you don't know what you're doing these things for, it can feel like it's just daily repetitive, and it's this sort of absurd thing. That's probably what this video is going to get into, because I haven't seen this video actually, but yeah, we'll keep it going. This lifestyle, although often tiresome and unfulfilling, is followed by most individuals most of the time without question. Once in a while, however...
See, that's the problem with a lot of people. A lot of people are so short-ranged, range in the moment, and they just basically live how other people tell them to. Everyone from a young age is told, get a job, go to school, get a job, and survive, basically. just do what you can to survive. Just work your everyday job. But there's so much more that you can do in life. Like, this is all you have. You have so much that you can achieve, and go do it. Like, set your values and go achieve something. And you don't have to listen to other people. Like, don't live the same life that everyone else lives. That's so boring and uninspiring. Live your own life.
A troubling experience can shake one from this waking slumber, be it a sense of isolation from others and disconnection from reality, an awareness of the fleeting nature of time, or a vivid realization of the death which awaits at some point in the future.
See, these are all things that I think a lot of people struggle with. I think this is why existentialism is so common. They feel like they're alone in the world. They feel like time, I mean, the passing of time, that's probably the biggest one we can respond to. And then death's another thing that a lot of people fear. That was probably the biggest thing for me to overcome when I got rejected religion. Like, I was like, oh shit, death is coming. Like, I'm gonna die someday. And then I realized, no, this is irrelevant. It's gonna happen anyways, regardless of what I do about it. I should just live as well as I can. It doesn't, like, the fact of death does not take away any meaning from my life. There's still values to achieve. There's still happiness that I can achieve. And there's no point of focusing so much on death and letting that be something that scares me. Isolation's another one. Like, I mean, there's a sense in which you just have to, I don't know. It's just really important to get out more and talk to people. Like, when you're inside all day and just reflecting on yourself, you begin to feel isolated from the world. And there's a sense in which you do need to value what you have and look for friends constantly. Like, talk to people. That's a big thing. That's a big thing a lot of people struggle with, I think. It's really important to, like, get out and talk to people. And yeah, and there's also a sense in which people do get too concerned with others' view of them, and that can also lead to this sort of feeling of isolation quite a bit. Like, if you're constantly scared how others think about you, how others perceive you, like, you're sort of disconnecting yourself from them. You're not existing as an actual person. You're connecting yourself to these other people, but these other people aren't you. They have different experiences. And you just ultimately just feel completely isolated in this world when you realize that you aren't those people, but you're taking all of your opinions from those people. Every value that you have comes from other people that are separate from you, and that's such a terrible feeling. And then passing of time. I mean, that's something that we kind of got into earlier with the whole idea of just this idea that certain people, like, they don't do anything with their lives. They don't try to achieve any values, and that's so important. It's so important to get out and try to achieve things, but people stagnate quite a bit. People become second-handed, and they stagnate, and that leads them to feeling like they are completely alone in this world where time is passing and death is just around the corner. I mean, yeah, that's definitely a problem that I think a lot of people have. Daniel Krause says the lo-fi hip-hop in the background. I know, I love it so much. I constantly listen to lo-fi hip-hop now, it feels like. It's amazing. I love it so much. The only death I worry about is the death of people I find important to me. I don't need to care about my death. I won't be there to notice. I love that quote so much, but it's so hard. It's so hard to get in your head. Like, it's so hard to actually believe that oh yeah, I won't be there to notice it. Like, people constantly think of life as this sort of unending thing, and they don't know how to conceptualize the fact that no, it ends, and that is scary, and that confuses a lot of people. And it's really tough to do when you focus on it. Like, people, it's so hard to conceptualize nothing. That's the problem with a lot of people when they think about existence as well, I think. Like, how did existence begin? Where did time begin? Well, they're like, there had to be a beginning. So what happened before time? Well, that doesn't make sense. There's nothing before time. Before time is not a relevant term because the term before only makes sense in the context of time. But yeah, it's a misconceptualization of what it means, what nothing means. DDV show, I love reflecting on myself. I've always been an indoors person my entire life. Yeah, I mean, there's not a problem with that, with, like, being a more indoors type of person, but it's also really good to get out and meet people. Like, people are a value to you, and you can't let people become the value. You have to sort of put them in the context of being a value to you. A lot of what second-handers do is they make people this intrinsic value, sort of, and then when you're an introvert, when you're someone who likes staying inside, more often, or is not as social, you become afraid because these other people are this intrinsic value, and you're failing to deal with other people constantly. And it's just, and that's I mean, that's another reason for isolation. I mean, yeah. I mean, holy shit, like, I can see why existentialism was so attractive to me back in the day. Like, yeah, holy shit. Oh, ALR, I used to be a materialist. Yeah, man. I mean, I don't relate as much to the materialist side of stuff, because I was always, like, very much like a spiritualist. I could never understand materialism, because that just seems like pure, straight-out nihilism, and I could never get with that, because, like, there's no free will, there's no reason to make any of these choices. I mean, that's just depressing. I mean, that's why I held on to religion for so long, was because that was the alternative. Just this depressing materialistic lack of free will, lack of meaning, all that sort of stuff. And that was scary.
Such experiences elicit feelings of anxiety, alienation, and dissatisfaction with life, leading one to confront questions relating to the nature and purpose of human existence. But one day the why arises, wrote Camus, and everything begins in that weariness tinged with amazement. This why Camus held to be a yearning for unity, which can be thought of as a desire to understand the nature of the universe and an urge to unite with life, and thus repair the ubiquitous sense of separation which lies at the heart of the human condition.
That's really weird. Like a feeling that we're separated from. I don't even know what that means. A yearning for unity with existence? What does that mean? Like, we're part of existence, we're part of reality. For unity. And what would unity solve about these things? I don't know what that means.
Condition. The mind's deepest desire, he wrote, even in its most elaborate operations, parallels man's unconscious feeling in the face of his universe. It is an insistence upon familiarity, an appetite for clarity.
Oh, like an understanding of clarity of the universe. I mean, there's no problem with that. Like, yeah, I mean, there's good things in wanting to understand the universe and understand what is real and be more clear about what's going on. I mean, that's definitely important, because, like, if you want to achieve anything in life, if you want to feel any happiness, you need to know what reality is. You need to be clear on what there is out there for you to understand and what you need to do about it. I mean, that seems fundamentally like what this might mean, this yearning for unity, like this desire to understand what to do, this desire for clarity in ethics. I mean, basically, like, we're here without a manual on how to live. Like, we're born without a manual on how to survive, what to do, and that scares a lot of people because they never know what to do. No one's ever told them. Well, I mean, they expect that, and then they struggle because of that, because they're never told what to do. So it's like, what the fuck do I do? And then they're off on their own, and when nobody's telling them what to do anymore, they have, like, the midlife crisis, or they have an existential type crisis. And that's sort of what the existentialists are trying to deal with, it seems like.
Nostalgia for unity, that appetite for the absolute, illustrates the essential impulse of the human drama. In the past, this nostalgia for unity was nourished by various mythical, religious, and philosophical systems, which justified earthly existence and gave it meaning. However, born in an age which was wrestling with the death of God, Camus could not believe in the validity of any of these.
Yeah, see, the death of God, I think, is actually, like, a really, really important concept. Because, like, when we realize that God doesn't exist, how do we find meaning anymore? How do we find meaning anymore? And that's what objectivism solved for me, that problem. Of now what? Like, God doesn't exist. Now, is life meaningful? Now what do I do? I mean, existentialists just, their answer is just create whatever you feel like. Create whatever you feel like is the best thing to do. And just, like, just exist and embrace the fact that there's no meaning and just laugh at it. Like, I mean, that's the wrong way to look at these sort of things.
Metaphysical worldviews. If the only significant history of human thought were to be written, it would have to be the history of its successive regrets and its impotences. Contrary to many
That's a very depressing look at human history. Holy shit. Like, look at all the amazing things that we've created. Like, I am live streaming right now to 4 people. But I mean, like, I have like 300 subscribers, and I'm like live streaming to the internet, to the world, for the world to see. Like, I have like, oh, this microphone to make my voice sound better. Like, who thinks of that? This phone to be able to communicate with people and talk to people. Like, all these incredible things. Like, how are we going to say that it's a history of successive regrets and impotences? That's such a depressing way of looking at man, and such a depressing way of looking at life.
Philosophical and religious worldviews, which exalt the divinity of human reason, Camus did not believe it had the capacity to catch hold of.
Human reason is incredible. Look at what it has created. The reason why humans are the greatest species is because of our reason. We have this ability to think about the world, conceptualize things, and discover what's true, and then do something about it, and to create incredible things based off of that.
Any transcendent truth or meaning. I don't know whether this world has a meaning that transcends it, but I know that I do not know that meaning, and that it is impossible for me just now to know it. This set up a disturbing problem for Camus. Recognizing that human existence is a futile merry-go-round with no end but death stimulates an appetite for clarity, a desire...
What? A futile merry-go-round with no end but death? Is that what life is? No. You're constantly moving forward to achieve something, to achieve these higher states of consciousness, to achieve life, to achieve values, to create amazing things. Sure, death comes eventually, but that's not to be looked at. You live long range. You live and focus on what you can achieve, what is great about reality. And there are great things that you can do in this world. I mean, to say that reason is impotent and we can never actually do anything in life is so absurd. Do you think Steve Jobs didn't think that he could do anything in life? Look at what Steve Jobs made. He created the iPhone. He created an incredible life for himself. I mean, all this stuff is amazing. All this stuff that the human mind can do is incredible.
To understand the absolute ordering principles and purpose behind the universe. But our reason is confined to the evidence from our experience.
The purpose behind the universe. What does that mean? What does it mean for the universe itself to have a purpose? There's no purpose apart from a value, or like there's no values apart from a value, or there's no purpose intrinsic to the universe. That's a false assumption. And if you expect there to be a purpose behind the universe, you're making a mistake. All that there is a purpose to is to individual beings. And there is real purpose. There's real meaning based on the facts that I have certain requirements to live and certain requirements if I want to be happy. And if I can do those things, I will achieve life and I will achieve happiness. I mean, those are my values. If I can achieve my values, I will achieve life, I will achieve happiness. And those are two different perspectives on the same thing. Like, existentially, living, that's like the ultimate goal, like to keep on living. But psychologically, what comes with living? What is the reward for living? Happiness. I mean, these two things are integrated together.
Experience. And thus when it comes to the spiritual comforts we long for, there can be no certainty whatsoever. We are like Tantalus, who was condemned for eternity to stand in a pool of water beneath overhanging fruit, which receded every time he reached for it.
No, we can grab the fruit and eat it. We can't grab the whole, we can grab the fruit. We can't grab, all of it, every single thing that we could possibly imagine. There's not an infinite fruit tree, but we can grab the fruit and we can eat the fruit. Our values are possible in life.
Deep yearnings for a beyond to justify this earthly existence will forever remain
Why do we need a beyond to justify an earthly existence? I don't know what that means. Why does that matter? No end to existence discredits the fact that I achieved happiness during existence, or that I achieved something during existence.
Unfulfilled, and beneath the flux of daily existence, we will at our core feel like strangers in a strange universe. For this reason, Camus concluded that human existence is absurd. Man stands face to face with the irrational. He feels within him his longing for happiness and for reason. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world.
The world doesn't tell you how to achieve happiness and how to think about things. You have to do that yourself. And we can do that. That's the fundamental thing that Rand says in the face of In the face of the fact that the world doesn't tell us how to achieve happiness and how to use reason, Rand tells us that we can. Even though the universe doesn't tell us how, we still can. We have the ability to do these things. Because truth is out there for us to discover. And we can discover it by using our ability to, ability to form concepts, and our ability to discover rational values.
It is not that the universe in and of itself is absurd. Instead, the absurd arises from...
That's the background of the Charles 2 video that I liked. Probably, yeah, I mean, there's problems with Charles 2, but I did like this video.
From our relationship with the universe. It exists within the tension between our yearning for unity and the indifference of the universe to this yearning. In Camus' words, the absurd depends as...
I mean, if you expect the universe to give you things, I mean that's what it seems like these people expect. They have this sort of primacy of consciousness view of existence of the universe, and that doesn't work. That simply is. I mean, yeah, that's simply destructive. I mean, because the universe is not conscious. The universe doesn't have values that it can give you. You have to go out and discover them for yourself, and you can.
As much on man as it does on the world. What is one to do when faced with the realization that human existence is absurd? In the myth of Sisyphus, Camus put forth two preliminary strategies for dealing with this awareness: physical suicide and philosophical suicide. Some people commit physical suicide upon the realization that life is absurd, believing that if life has no meaning, it must not be worth the trouble. While physical suicide is one solution, many more tend towards what Camus called philosophical suicide. In the attempt to flee from the unsettling awareness of the absurdity of life, they escape through faith and hope. Despite no evidence, such people adopt...
I mean, I'd agree that both of these things are bad. They're both bad ways to escape the fact that it's like the universe doesn't hand you values.
Adopt the belief that beyond this earthly existence exists absolute harmony, nirvana, meaning, or God. Camus viewed both types of suicide, physical and philosophical, as possible responses to the awareness that life is absurd. Does its absurdity require one to...
It seems like he's using absurdity to refer to the fact that life doesn't hand you values, that you need to go out and discover values for yourself. And like this fact that that the universe itself doesn't hand you values can lead to certain people committing suicide because they don't want to struggle to achieve their values and discover their values. Or they can commit philosophical suicide by sort of by becoming someone who believes in religion or has faith in things, and faith in God's values, that God will give them values. Which both of those are bad responses. They're both very terrible ethical responses.
To escape it through hope or suicide? That is what must be clarified, hunted down, and elucidated while brushing aside all the rest. Does the absurd dictate death? While admitting suicide as a possible response to the absurd, Camus concluded that those who choose to commit physical or philosophical suicide fail to understand that to maintain an awareness of the absurd without opting for death represents an accomplishment, a supreme state of consciousness. To be aware of the absurd and of the crushing fate which awaits is for Camus to become superior to it. Such an individual Camus called an absurd hero.
They view that as a hero just to pretend just to accept the fact and just deal with it. I mean, that's stupid.
The maintenance of a lucid awareness.
The values you can achieve values even if the universe doesn't hand them to you. And that's what it seems that these people miss.
Awareness of the absurdity of life tends to naturally stimulate revolt, a feeling of outrage and protest against one's tragic condition, and a defiant refusal to be broken by it. It is a constant confrontation between man and his own obscurity. It is an insistence upon an impossible transparency. It challenges the world anew every second. It is not aspiration, for it is devoid of hope. That revolt is the certainty of a crushing fate.
I mean, these people, what the existentialists do is they crush this idea of hope. They say that hope is impossible, or that there's nothing possible in this universe, that there's no values that exist in the world, and that's dangerous. I mean, that's destructive. What is the point of living after that? There is none. There is none. If values aren't achievable, there is no point of living. And that what these people say is you accept it and you trudge through it anyways. Why would you trudge through it? There's no reason to.
8. Without the resignation that ought to accompany it.
Existentialists are not happy people in general. Like, the people who are attracted to this philosophy are not happy people. It's absurd to assume that these are happy people.
Revolt is to say no to one's absurd existence, and in the process to say yes to some other, more desirable existence. This affirmation implicit in revolt leads to rebellion, which is the attempt to refashion human existence through one's own efforts. In every rebellion is to be found...
Yeah, I mean, you can't change existence, certainly. I mean, that's certainly true. But why is that a bad thing? Why is it bad that you can't change existence? ALR asks how to develop a consistent reading habit. Just start with, 10 pages a day. I mean, that's what I did. Or you can start with 5. Just read a certain amount every day, and then eventually, jump that up by a few pages. And every day you can just keep doing that. And that's sort of the best way to build any sort of habit.
The metaphysical demand for unity, the impossibility of capturing it, and the construction of a substitute universe. Rebellion, from this point of view, is a fabricator of universes. Despite its healthy initial impulse, rebellion does not always lead to constructive change. In fact, Camus believed destructive, or what he called nihilistic forms of rebellion to be common, especially in the modern era. Camus, who lived in the midst of some of the worst genocide...
Charles II is Camus.
Totalitarian regimes of the 20th century, believed them to be forms of rebellion against the absurd. Upon the recognition that there is no beyond to justify this existence, these movements expressed a hatred of life and a desire, in a godless universe,
it's bad to try to destroy life and destroy the world.
To play the role of both God and devil. With the throne of God being overthrown, the rebel now recognizes that it is up to him to create this justice, this order, this unity, and by doing so to justify the fall of God. Then begins the desperate effort to create...
Well, we don't create it on our own. We don't entirely create a new set of meaning. There is a set of meaning that exists from the fact of our existence and its relationship with the world. There's, values are objective. Values are real things. Values exist as a relationship between man and existence, because to live, to achieve happiness, man has to do certain things. And these certain things will give him happiness and will give his life meaning. That's just a fact of reality. Go do something productive. Go do something. And go do something that is, or go pursue a value worth achieving. And you'll realize that, this is something that brings me happiness. This gives me meaning. It's not something that you would create out of thin air, but it's also not you just accepting the fact that the world doesn't hand you meaning straight out of the gate.
Create, at the price of crime if necessary, the empire of man. All nihilistic forms of rebellion justify the murder and destruction they impose on the world through the claim that in an absurd universe, if nothing is true and there are no moral values, then everything is permitted. If we believe in nothing, if nothing has any meaning, and if we can affirm no values whatsoever, then everything is possible and nothing has any importance.
If we believe that nothing has any meaning, there's nothing wrong with that statement. If nothing has any meaning, there's no reason that anything has any importance. And then you just pursue hedonism at all costs. Just simply pursue whatever gives you the most pleasure, apart from the fact that your life has objective requirements, and apart from the fact that you want to feel real happiness.
Nihilistic rebellions to be constant temptations, appealing to the universal yearning for unity common to all. The major socialist movements of the 20th century, for example, starting from an awareness of the absurd and a loss of faith in the divine, turned toward history for salvation by championing the coming of a utopia. Socialism is therefore an enterprise for the deification of man, and has assumed some of the characteristics of traditional religion.
Socialism does have religious characteristics, but it's not a deification of man. That's a weird... it puts society in the place of God, in a sense, which is true. That is what socialism does, but it doesn't put an individual in the place of where God should have been, the person that creates and can achieve values. And still, an individual can't be put in that place either, because it's it's reality that creates these values. Not apart from human beings. There's no way that reality has values apart from human beings, but reality is what gives you values. Reality is what values, where your values come from. It's based on the fact of your interaction with existence. Diego says, hedonism requires you to give meaning to something at least. Full nihilism is impossible because anyone who practices it would be dead. That is true. That is true. Yeah, hedonism does give you something to direct yourself towards, but it's disconnected from life, and it ultimately is just empty pleasure. Because it's not connected to anything. There's no productivity that's connected to. And like pleasure gives you diminishing returns over time. Like if you keep injecting yourself with heroin, every time it's going to get less and less every time it's going to be less and less pleasurable. And it's extremely destructive because it's not a sustainable form of pleasure. That's the fundamental, I think, with hedonism. Hedonism does not promote a sustainable form of pleasure. And sustainable being that it is pro-life. It prolongs your life as well. Meaning, like, that's what sustainable sort of means in this context. The fact is, a objectivist lifestyle, it is focused on pleasure that prolongs the human life. While hedonism is just pleasure as such, and that ends up being very self-destructive, because heroin right now is going to give me more pleasure than going to work on homework or something like that. But what's going to give me more pleasure long run? What's going to make me a happier person? And what's actually going to sustain my life? Well, obviously doing the homework, and that is what I should do, objectively.
Religions. When truth, justice, harmony...
And it's objective because life is an objective state of being. You're either alive or dead. There's no saying that, oh, I'm not objectively alive. What does that even mean?
A utopia are posited to exist in the future. The realization of this utopia located at the end of history becomes the sole measure of value, and any means that are thought to contribute to the actualization of it are justified, be it a denial of individual freedom, torture, or even genocide. If it is certain that the kingdom will come, what does time matter? Suffering is never provisional for the man who does not believe in the future. But 100 years of suffering are fleeting in the eyes of the man who prophesies, for the 101st year, the definitive city.
What does time matter? Suffering is never provisional. Yeah,
Such nihilistic rebellions are characterized by what Camus called a demand...
I didn't see anything super worth, like, tearing apart in that quote.
...for totality. Seeking to achieve the impossible by completely eradicating the absurdity of human existence and implementing a utopia, they wreak destruction, chaos, and suffering on the world in the name of a...
I mean, I agree that those people who, like, try to create these ideal utopian societies at the cost of individuals are bad people. This is sort of a criticism of the power lusters at this point. Now, it's a criticism for the wrong reasons. The reason that power lusters are self-destructive is because they're parasites. They fundamentally rely on the people that they have power over to gain any sort of values. Power lust is fundamentally second-handed.
The delusion. Totality is, in effect, nothing other than the ancient dream of unity common to both believers and rebels, but projected horizontally onto an earth deprived of God. In contrast to nihilistic rebellions, which pollute the original and authentic meaning of rebellion, Camus championed what he thought to be a genuine form of rebellion, which recognizes the necessity of shared communal values and attempts to bring about solidarity, individual freedom, and a relative harmony among human beings.
Why is that the value? Why is he putting value in other people now? That's ultimately just going to destroy you even more. I mean, all the reasons a lot of these things come up is by placing your value fundamentally in other people. By saying that your life has no value of its own, so I'm going to place value in the society. Wasn't he just arguing against people who place the value in the society fundamentally? I'm back. What did I miss? Did you watch If Objectivism Succeeded yet? I have not finished this video yet. I've been kind of tearing it apart for the past 40 minutes. Wow. Yeah, I'll watch the What If Objectivism Succeeded after I'm finished with this video.
Men cannot refer to a common value, recognized by all as existing in each one, then man is incomprehensible to man. Camus believes such common values could be achieved through the recognition that all human beings are children of the absurd. It is a subjection to it.
What? This sounds like religion, basically. Like, children of the absurd, just replace absurd with God. They're basically replacing God with the absurd while claiming that they're not replacing God with anything.
A common tragic fate, and our protest against our condition which unites and binds us together in a solidarity of chains. I rebel, wrote Camus.
A solidarity of chains. What a low view of life. I mean, the fundamental problem here, and I can't stress this enough, is that these people don't believe values are possible. I rebel, therefore we exist. What? He's making we this fundamental here, and making rebellion the ultimate act of existence.
Camus, therefore we exist. With an understanding that the absurdity of human existence cannot be completely eradicated, genuine rebellion does not strive for the implementation of a utopia by destructive means, as nihilistic rebellions do, but recognizes the dignity and rights of others, and attempts to implement unity among individuals.
Why is his hand so low, though? He's sliding down the back, about to gain some values. Let's go.
Individuals. No doubt the rebel demands a certain freedom for himself, but in no circumstances does he demand, if he is consistent, the right to destroy the person and freedom of someone else. He degrades no one. The freedom which he demands he claims for everybody. That which he rejects he forbids all others to exercise. He is not simply a slave opposing his master, but a man opposing the world of master and slave. Bound together by a shared struggle within an absurd condition, Camus envisioned a community rising up and rebelling against the evils and injustices of the world. Yet Camus was
justice. Why is the thing is he's using an altruist morality here and making the community the standard. I don't know. There's a lot of shit to unpack here, and I don't think that I could fully do that because there's a lot of things that I don't understand the connection of what they actually are referring to. He's using very weird explanations here.
Not totally optimistic such a situation would be realized. In his book The Fall, he explored the possibility of a world in which nobody takes up the challenge to fight against injustice, and where solidarity and hence relative peace and harmony are never achieved. Camus...
Oh, Daniel, the call-in works basically by, just DM me on Twitter, my link is in the description, and then I can send you a link to... I'll send you a link to a Hangouts call, and then you can just hop in and talk.
Concern was well-founded. In our day, freedom in many areas of life is dwindling, and governments across the world are rallying people.
But why is freedom a value? A freedom is not a value to the collective as such. Freedom is a value to the individual, so that the individual can go and achieve their values, which you don't think are possible.
To sacrifice personal freedoms for the promise of future harmony and security. If such a trend continues, Camus had some prescient advice for those who refuse to walk this line, but rather prefer freedom. The only way to deal with an unfree world, he wrote, is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion.
I mean, yeah, you definitely want to rebel against a tyrannical sort of government. Of course. I mean, Camus is not terrible, but there's a very collectivistic undertone to these things and a very depressing, malevolent view of existence. But yeah.